están? Queremos saber quién va a necesitar traducción de inglés a español. Que levanten la mano, así organizamos este tema. Muchas gracias. Ahora sí, muy buenos días. Es un honor darles la bienvenida al Salón al Salón Alfonsín de la Legislatura de la Ciudad Autónoma de Buenos Aires para este encuentro sobre educación del carácter. Agradecemos especialmente la presencia de autoridades, legisladores, referentes del ámbito educativo, invitados especiales, señoras y señores. Hoy nos convoca una pregunta central. ¿Cómo formar no solo en conocimientos, sino también en virtudes, hábitos y criterios que permitan a las personas desarrollarse plenamente en sociedad? Para comenzar, escucharemos las palabras de bienvenida de la diputada Marina Kienast, diputada de esta casa. La escuchamos.
Muchas gracias, buenos días a todos. Bueno, gracias por estar acá hoy, tan tempranito, pero una linda convocatoria. Y sobre todo, thank you very much, James. Gracias, James, por estar acá con nosotros y Agustín también. James es un referente en educación del carácter. Hace muchísimos años su vida la dedicó a investigar sobre educación, pero más allá del conocimiento, más allá de lo que es aprender una materia, sino de cómo desarrollar los hábitos, las virtudes, la responsabilidad y todo lo que no quiero espolear, lo que él va a hablar sobre educación del carácter. Y Agustín Porres, con Fundación Barqui y Dandelion, logran traer a la Argentina y están trabajando también para llevarnos solo desde lo académico, que hemos vivido un congreso, un precongreso también muy, muy productivo el fin de semana, la verdad increíble. Me está contando éxitos más allá de lo que se ve tal vez en las notas y en lo que uno pudo experimentar. Y llevarlo también al territorio, a las escuelas, a los docentes, acercarse también a los gobiernos para que podamos entre todos lograr investigar, aprender y llevarlo a la política pública. No quiero, digamos, hablar más yo, porque teniéndolo a James acá y a Agustín, creo que lo importante es que ellos puedan enseñarnos y explicarnos un poco más de qué se trata. Por lo cual, la primera pregunta que tengo para James, y siempre Agustín pueden como complementarse, es ¿qué es lo que entendemos por educación del carácter? Que sé que la definición necesita a veces un poquito de doble clic. ¿Y por qué tiene que encontrar un lugar o encuentra un lugar importante en el sistema educativo?
Character education is very beneficial to young students in schools because it helps them flourish. And if children flourish, society will flourish as well. So it's very important to help children understand that they have a significant contribution to make to society. So it's very much about the civic virtues, of them contributing to society. That's one of the first things, but it also has many other benefits to young people. It helps them to have a sense of meaning and purpose in life. It gives them a real reference point so that they can, flourish with purpose. They can flourish with purpose. And if they do that, then it means that they will wake up in the morning and get out of bed with a sense that they're going into society again to contribute something. It's through our contributions to society that helps us form ourselves. It helps form us as the people that we are. So if we give nothing back, we don't actually become good people. We don't develop a moral compass, you know. So flourishing is very, very important for young children. So I went to a school just outside Buenos Aires on my first day, I think it was, here. And I went to this school. It was a rather poor school. And I met a young man, 18 years old. He told me that he'd been in the school since the age of 3. He'd been in the same school since the age of 3. And he then said, I asked him, you know, what do you like about this school? I like to ask students questions. So I asked him, what do you like about this school? He said, and this was remarkable, absolutely remarkable. He said to me, I know I'm loved in this school. My teachers love me and I love them. We don't talk about love very much in education, and yet we know that when the teachers love their students and when the students begin to love their teachers, you have a wonderful atmosphere. This is what happens in families. You expect your parents, your mother and your father, to love you. So schools are an extension of this family atmosphere. And if you can create that family atmosphere in a school, then half the battle is won. The children will flourish, which means that they will work harder and they will think better and they will contribute to society. So I think love is something I'm going to take away from Buenos Aires. By the way, I've been kissed more times over the last two or 3 days than I have been in the last 3 years. So I'll just say that.
Great. We are kissers, yeah.
Yeah, you are. You are very big kissers, yes.
Ahora tengo una pregunta que va desde un poco más, algo más práctico, que pregunta mucho, nos cuestiona a la gente. ¿Cómo se mide? ¿Cómo se puede medir educación del carácter y evaluar el impacto? ¿Cómo medimos el impacto?
Okay, so I first began thinking about citizenship. How do we create good citizens? And often we spent a lot of time talking about the citizenship part of it, you know, human rights. How do you write a letter to your representative, you know, to complain, usually? How do you do these things? So citizenship, I thought, was more than simply known about the politics. It has to be about being a good citizen. That means that you have to give something of yourself to others, to your neighbor, in a way. And so this is what drove me to character and to think about character. Now, you would never think of measuring citizenship. You can't have an A citizen and a B citizen and a C citizen. You know, you can't have different classes of citizens. We're all citizens of the same society, right? And we have to respect that. It's the same with character to some extent. It's not that you can grade a child as a good character and a bad character, etc. Now, we know that we do think like that. We think, you know, this child is really bad. You know, we have to do something with this child. So it's about recognition. And this is why I think I mentioned that when the Queen, the late Queen of Britain, she's Queen of Scotland, by the way, as well as Queen of England, and she died in Scotland. So we had her body for 2 days before we sent it back to London. But anyway, she asked me the same question. So the Queen asked me the same question. How does one measure character, she asked me. And I said, Your Majesty, one doesn't measure character, one recognizes it. And this is what teachers do. They use their professional judgment and they recognize character in the children that they teach. The students recognize character also in the teacher, the other way. You know, they can see the character in the teacher as well. And they're usually better at it than the teacher is the other way around. So yeah, I wouldn't say you can measure character individually. However, you can measure to some extent character in the whole school. And this will be seen in the atmosphere of the school. Does the school welcome me? Does it welcome the parents into the school? Or does it keep them at a distance? Does it make them feel comfortable in the school? And guests coming into the school. Should I mention River Plate? No. Any River Plate supporters here? I won't mention it. Anyway.
You lost yesterday against
Did you lose? Oh, I don't want to add to your misery. But anyway. But the school, I mean, I didn't sense when I visited the River Plate school that they welcomed us, you know. The students were too busy walking around as if they were already famous people, you know, in their tracksuits. It was true. I mean, it was incredible. However, I'll leave that aside. You can tell when you walk into a school very easily if this is a good school. You know what I mean. You know, you walk into a school, you can smell the atmosphere, you can see it, you can feel it, you know. And this takes planning. It's intentional. You can't just, you know, that doesn't happen overnight. You have to develop it. And the whole community creates that atmosphere. We call it ethos, the ethos of the school. And this is so important that schools develop a community ethos which welcomes everyone. The people that they have to welcome most is the students. They have to feel they belong. And when someone feels that they belong somewhere, this is very formative. They begin to go through a process of formation within that community. The whole community helps you become who you are. This is what character does. And so it's not possible to measure it completely, but you can do, you know, some people like to ask scientific questions, you know, are you happy, you know, etc. But I'm a bit suspicious of that. I think I go for professional judgment. We should trust our teachers to make the right decisions for the students that they teach, and we have to give them the freedom to do that.
100% de acuerdo con que los docentes y los directivos tienen que tener esa libertad para poder entender en esa comunidad, ¿no?, qué necesidades y respecto de la educación del carácter. Y creo que si bien no se puede medir, tal vez a lo largo de la vida tiene un impacto y lo sabes cuando vas desarrollándote, ¿no? Es decir, en tu trabajo, en tu familia, con la sociedad. Y voy ahora a ¿sí? ¿Algún comentario? Una pregunta que está muy en boga y es la relación con las redes sociales, con ese tema tal vez un poco más contemporáneo que preocupa, que no todos sabemos cómo abordarlo en las escuelas o desde la política pública, y creo que la educación del carácter tiene mucho que aportar.
Character does have a lot to offer those who use social media. Lots of young people have not been prepared for the technology that they use. The technology is moving fast and the children are behind. Then society blames teachers. Teachers should make sure that they are prepared for technology. This is a whole society problem. It's not just about schools, it's the whole of society. Australia has banned under 16-year-olds. Britain is just about to do the same. We're moving in the same direction. So is France. So are other countries in Europe. So there is a movement to stop this from happening, you know, that children are exposed to. After all, even the tech companies say that children should not be on these websites, and yet they are. They do nothing to stop it. They don't do the verifications, nothing. And even when they do, children are very good at these things. They get around it, you know. So we have to find a way of dealing with that. Now, I want students to be wise, to have the wisdom to make the right decisions. And when students are wise, when they can make the right decision, I'm not so bothered by social media because they can navigate it with wisdom. But lots of children are not wise. They don't have this wisdom. They don't have the experience to deal with it. And so it's only a minority that would be wise in that sense. So I think we need to do more. And technology companies have to take greater responsibility for what's happening. A lot of mental illness, you know, the children thinking that they're anxious. What's making them anxious is social media. They have lots of friends on social media, but they have very few real friends of one-to-one. I experience this in universities. More and more middle-class students who come from good families are experiencing loneliness. They feel very lonely. Why do they feel lonely? Because they're not actually experiencing friendship on a one-to-one basis. They prefer to send text messages of 5 words. You know, this is the level of their communication with other people. So this is a real problem, not just for children in schools, but also for university students. Many of them take antidepressants, and some of them go back and have repeat prescriptions for antidepressants. This is a crisis. And what do? We employ more and more counselors who give them a badge. You know, they have a big box of labels. They say, here, you're suffering from this. They're not doctors, you know, they're not even qualified psychiatrists or anything like that, you know, but they give you a badge. And the student goes away, I'm now a victim. I've got an excuse of why I have these mental problems because I've got a label. I think they're witch doctors, you know. They are really telling people the wrong thing. Whereas what we should be developing is resilience. We should develop, you know, a feeling of we can get over this together. And it's together we get over it. Talk to your friends. Get good friendships. Build those friendships. Choose good partners, you know, people that will enhance you, make you a better person. This is how to overcome mental illness. And this, you can only do this through good character. If you've got good character, you will make the right decisions.
Gracias. ¿Cómo se trabaja desde la educación del carácter con la familia? Yo sé que hay programas para alumnos, pero ¿cómo se trabaja con las familias, ¿no? Que es importante.
Okay, when it comes to the family, schools, we have to begin with the point. Schools are not responsible completely for our children's character. The first educators, the very first educators, is your family. That is your parents, your brothers and sisters, your grandparents, and your wider family. This is the central part that makes us who we are. Teachers are secondary. They come second to that. So we should always remember that. We also remember that schools, this is why we have primary, meaning first, secondary, meaning second, tertiary, university level, meaning third. These are just stages of education. But the most important stage of education is life itself, you know, the whole of life. So character is ongoing. It's about the whole of your life. And these are only stages. These are formative stages which help you on that journey of life. Parents are hugely important. Schools should be wide open to the contribution that parents can make and not see them as distant. Lots of schools think of parents as problematic. Some parents are problematic. They demand too much. But, you know, it's important that we consult with parents. So when you design what you're going to do on character in a school, the types of things you might do, you must consult with the parents. Tell them what you're doing. Share it with them. Parents are very used to having the teacher call them and say, your child is in trouble. Teachers very rarely phone a parent and say, your child is fantastic. They've done a great job today. So it tends to be negative. So we should change the atmosphere, make things more positive, celebrate children, communicate that to parents as well. It will change the atmosphere between parents and teachers. It just changes the atmosphere. In the school that I founded, which is dedicated to character at the university that I'm in, we get the teachers once a week. They have to phone a parent to say something positive about their child. So the parents get very nervous when they get a call from the school, you know. But now they're beginning to think it might not be negative, it could be positive. So celebrate children, not just tell people that they've been bad, We have to do both.
¿Y es posible o has visto en tu experiencia que la escuela y los padres y los docentes se desarrollen su propio programa de educación del carácter con acuerdos? ¿No?
Yeah. So we give each of the children in the school that I'm talking about, this university school, we give them a diary and they write down the virtues. So we give them, first of all, we introduce the virtues. Every child in my school, they are introduced to Aristotle. So they learn about Aristotle from the age of 11, and they learn about friendship, about what Aristotle said about friendship, about community, about virtues, big on the virtues, and we give them a list of the virtues and definitions. It's very important that children learn the language of virtue, that they're able to talk about it. Kindness is not something in your head. You can't just be a kind person in your head. You have to act kindly to make kindness real. The same with compassion. You can't be compassionate as a person unless you act on the compassion with other people, So that means listening to people and not judging them too much, being with them, sort of supporting them as well. And our children, if you came to our school and you asked them, they're able to converse, they're able to talk about what these things are. And that's what people, visitors to our school, say, that the children can, talk about the virtues and define them. So it's very important to teach them these things. And another thing I'd like to share with you is that we have what's called, we introduced this meal. So we teach every child to cook a meal. So they have to do a 3-course meal. And then they have to invite someone in that is close to them to say thank you. So we encourage them, we call it the gratitude meal, okay? So we get these children to invite someone in. Who do you think they invite in? What's the biggest proportion of people that they invite in?
Parents?
No.
No parents.
No.
Dog?
Parents are quite small down on it.
Pet?
Grandparents. Children have a very emotional relationship with their grandparents, mainly because grandparents tend to buy chocolate and things for them, and spoil them. Yeah. And so they invite their grandparents. These occasions, this is called creating opportunities to develop a virtue like gratitude. The parents come in and they bring a little present in, more chocolates for the child, And these children get very nervous about cooking the meal. And they cook this meal in front of their grandparents, and you can see the emotion and the feelings. Now, the meal could be terrible. I mean, it really could. But the grandparents don't say it's terrible. They keep on saying, thank you. Thank you. They're just so pleased that they've been invited in. And this, not only do we have a good relationship with the parents, we have a very good relationship with the grandparents as well, which is unusual. But this is mainly because of the students themselves. So these are the types of things. You have to give opportunity to practice these virtues. Yeah? So, and this is what we try to do. Another example is that we have a hospice for terminally ill children, very close to the school, just 100 meters away from the school. You probably know that children who are terminally ill, who have cancer, are living longer because of the drugs. So instead of having them just in the hospice approached us and said, could we bring in some of the children to the school for, say, 1 or 2 days a week so as they could meet other children? I said yes. Some people said no, because we don't want our children in the school experiencing these children dying and that they lose their friends or they lose. But it's been a remarkable success. The children learn about death. They learn about how to be good. They learn how to be kind and empathetic with these children as well. And it works brilliantly, sort of thing. So you have to look for opportunities for this to happen. And when it happens, it's great, But you can do a bit of experiment. You have to deal with it in your own communities. Find out how can you find opportunities to develop character. All you need is loving teachers, as I said. The teachers love the students, you will get this. Anyway, these things will develop.
Excelente. Me voy a a lo que puede llegar a posibilitar esto desde una política pública, porque lograrlo in situ, en una escuela, tal vez en el sistema público, que no tiene tanta posibilidad de decidir, ¿qué propuestas o consejos para generar una política pública que sea permeable a aplicar este tipo de educación?
So when I mean, this, I don't have to tell Augustine this, he knows how to do this already. But when I began to do character education nearly 30 years ago, I encouraged my team and myself to get involved with politicians. You know, it was very important that we got involved with all politicians. We didn't go a particular party. We said everyone. We want to. So we would call upon local representatives from your constituency where you were elected, and we'd ask you to come and launch a report that we would have. So we would get representatives. This was a way of educating politicians, you know, to get them interested in the area. And we would also launch it with lots of people, and then they could see that teachers were interested in this. So we had to persuade politicians. Some politicians were a bit funny, you know, what's this? You know, is this extra? This is not something I can support, you know. But if you're around academics tend to be around a very long time, whereas politicians tend to be around for a short time. So you've always got another chance with the next one and the next one and the next one, and one of them will go for it. And this is what happened. And so our whole government began to talk about this, and they introduced legislation which said that character was to be part of the inspection of schools. That inspectors have to look, they ask the teachers, how do you build the character of your students? And the teachers have to answer that. Now, they don't tell them how to do it. They ask them, how are you going to do it? Yeah? So that's the important thing. I've always advised politicians not to do top-down. Teachers don't like to be told what to do. So ask the teachers, first of all, and build it from the bottom up. All you have to do at the top is to encourage them, to say, this is good and we support this. So your role is to support, not to legislate by saying you must do this sort of thing. But every good school does character. Every school I've been to in Buenos Aires sort of thing does character of some form. Some of them can articulate it, others find it difficult. You know, but they're all doing something on character. It's much better to be conscious of what you're doing, you know, to be clear about what you're doing and to describe it within your school. So yeah, I'm saying politicians are very important, and we have to work with them, but we have to work with all of them. It doesn't matter what political color. And this is something that we've been quite successful. Now, I learned this, I was invited to the White House in 1996. So I met Hillary Clinton then, President Clinton. Remember, he was into character. He talked about the virtues. It's a bit ironic, really. But anyway, he did. He talked about character, and he started these character conferences in the White House in 1996. And I got an invite there, and I met all these people. So I began to realize that this was rather important, you know. And so I went back to Britain and began a campaign to have character in schools in Britain, and now we have it. But it took a long time. These things do not happen overnight. You have to work. It's almost lifetime. You have to work very hard to make these things happen. But we've built the foundations. Now, Augustine has taken advantage of this and using all the things that we've learned, and he can bring it to fruition here.
Gracias. Vamos a hablar con Agustín un ratito.
Yeah.
So, Agustín justo habló de experiencias en las escuelas, de cómo bajarlo, ¿no? De cómo llevarlo. Te quería preguntar primero por la fundación, por Barky Dandelion, cuál es el objetivo y cómo están trabajando para operativizarlo, como decimos los políticos.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias primero, Marina, por recibirnos, por poner esto en agenda hoy y hace un tiempo largo ya. And thank you, James, for still being here. for not quitting in between the agenda that we put together. Y gracias a todo el equipo de Marina por todo el trabajo detrás para recibirnos. Muy breve, pero quiero aprovechar para como poner la historia sobre la mesa. Hay algunos miembros del equipo de Fundación Barqui acá que están desde el principio. Nosotros este año cumplimos 10 años trabajando en la formación de docentes, de directores y de ministros en Argentina. Levanten la mano los que estuvieron desde el principio. Ernie, Anita, Juan Pablo, Pau, Graciela. Graciela es la número 1. De Jujuy, Pame, Nati. Con Graciela empezamos juntos hace 10 años a formar a directores de escuela. Y cuando creamos el primer programa, por el cual después pasaron 10.000 directores, lo armamos, era un programa de liderazgo e innovación. Y trabajamos el liderazgo, y trabajamos distintas corrientes, y aprendimos, y fuimos desarrollando también mucho material propio. Y en el 2019, Carlos de Marcos, que está ahí atrás, nos señaló y dijo, miren que liderazgo es carácter. Entonces, ¿qué es carácter? Empezamos a investigarlo y resultó que, siempre me acuerdo un día que Matías, un miembro del equipo pedagógico, dijo, lo que venimos haciendo es carácter. O sea, estas virtudes son lo que nosotros estamos haciendo. Con lo cual, en ese momento, en 2019, nos metimos en el mundo del carácter. Carlos desarrolló un marco teórico que después les cuento, y Carlos nos señaló a James. Entonces le mandamos un mail, empezamos a hablar, tuvimos una primera reunión. La primera reunión fue un desastre. Yo corté ese Zoom y dije, este tipo no nos da bola nunca más. Y me hizo una pregunta filosófica sobre Aristóteles y contesté muy mal, porque estaba nervioso. Entonces, 6 años después que James esté acá, que sigamos trabajando juntos, para nosotros es un honor. Y que hoy esté nuestro equipo, Carlos, James, también es súper especial. Así que no responde la pregunta, pero es el marco para decir, al final, yo creo que esto del carácter que estamos haciendo está marcando una agenda nueva. Creo que estamos hablando de algo que no se hablaba en la Argentina, en América Latina. El sábado contamos con ministros de toda la región hablando de este tema y es algo de verdad nuevo. Eso tiene que ver con personas muy concretas, que para mí es una alegría que hoy estén acá, porque al final, nada, somos nosotros los que tenemos la posibilidad de generar los grandes cambios. Y creo que el amor, que decía James, de ese alumno, creo que el amor y la amistad hacen estas cosas posibles. Porque al final no es que esto es un encuentro intelectual o técnico. En gran medida, estas personas son amigos con quienes nos llevamos bien, confiamos y nos dan ganas de trabajar juntos. Y por eso sostenemos en el tiempo. Entonces hay algo detrás que para mí es la amistad que hace posible muchas de estas transformaciones. Y nada, como nos queremos y queremos hacer el bien, creo que tenemos una agenda muy potente para hacerlo. Creo que si seguimos empujando este tema, si seguimos vinculando más y más escuelas del país, nada, no hay resistencia. Entonces, como el límite es infinito, creo que tenemos que seguir en esa dirección. No contesté nada de lo que me pediste, pero quería compartir esto.
Me parece bien, lo pusiste en un marco, tal vez lo podría haber hecho. Uy. Bien. No, pero a mí me interesó cuando vimos que presentaste en el último congreso el concepto de bíceps y un poquito cuáles son las virtudes, ¿no? Como para aquellos que no estén tan... el otro día decían en el precongreso, es difícil explicar el concepto de carácter. ¿Tiene buen carácter o mal carácter? Para nosotros eso es otra cosa. Es como si estás de buen humor o de mal humor. Entonces, realmente... que poder nosotros que vamos a estar promoviendo las ideas y tratando de llevarlas al mundo educativo también desde la política pública, poder explicar un poquito más qué es y qué se compone.
Perfecto. Tenemos, la primera barrera es cómo traducirlo, que lo hemos discutido mucho tiempo. Character Education no es traducción perfecta de educación de carácter. Para mí la traducción que más se acerca es el desarrollo de la personalidad. como de lo más profundo de la persona, y ahí están las virtudes. La virtud, filosóficamente, es una segunda naturaleza, es como una manera de obrar que nos es natural una vez adquirida o desarrollada, ¿no? Al final la virtud es el hábito operativo bueno, algo que por hacerlo habitualmente se convierte en algo que ya nos sale de manera natural. El hábito operativo malo es el vicio. Entonces es difícil encontrar el vocabulario. Elegimos quedarnos con esto de carácter porque, bueno, a veces lo decimos en inglés y un poco hasta generamos una conversación. Pero nosotros decimos, Dandelion es un centro de educación, de educación para la virtud. Es un centro que quiere desarrollar, o sea, llevar esto a las escuelas, llevar esto a la sociedad, pero también hacer investigación, como analizar para poder medir y mostrar el impacto que tiene en otros campos y al mismo tiempo hacer mucho advocacy para que hablemos de este tema. Y en ese marco, dos cosas. Nosotros venimos trabajando formando escuelas y formando también a funcionarios públicos de toda América Latina. En cualquier formación nuestra presentamos muchos marcos teóricos, o sea, muchas maneras de entender o, si se quiere, muchas listas de virtudes distintas. El Jubilee tiene un marco teórico, que son 4 pilares de distintos tipos de virtud. Hablamos esta semana de los IDGs, de los Inner Development Goals, que es otro marco. Hay muchos marcos en el mundo. Nosotros con Carlos desarrollamos uno que se llama Bíceps, pero antes de ir al nuestro, nosotros ponemos sobre la mesa muchos. Decimos, bueno, mirá, ¿te gusta el del Jubilee, que es más filosófico? ¿Te gusta uno que es más psicologista? ¿Te gusta uno más? Elegí uno y llevarlo a fondo. Lo que nos parece importante es que esto suceda, más allá de qué marco teórico. El gobierno de Jalisco acaba de desarrollar el suyo propio. Buenísimo, como lo importante al final es lo que decía James, ¿cómo haces para que esto pase? Llama a una persona por semana. El sábado en una conferencia un inglés colombiano dio una charla y dijo, 11 de la mañana del sábado, dijo, agarren el celular y mándenle un mensajito a alguien agradeciéndole. En el momento. Yo había dejado a mis hijos con mi mamá y mi mujer que estaba ahí le mandó un mensaje, gracias por agarrar a los chicos. Como cada uno mandó un agradecimiento, entonces se trata de concretizar. Es re lindo. Ok, ¿cuándo lo haces? ¿En qué momento?
I would just like to say, he's come a long way, hasn't he, you know, over the last 6 years. But Marina and Augustine came to our, Augustine's been many times to our annual conference at Oriel College and the University of Oxford. We have a conference there every January. It's an international conference, so we have people from every continent in the world to come there. But we often tell them that this is not a blueprint. These frameworks that we produce, this is not to say you must do this. These frameworks are discussion documents. It's for discussion. It's to open up the discussion so that you come up with your own framework. You actually decide what you want to do. So it's very important that we think about that these frameworks are not top-down. They are for discussion, and you come up with your own ideas on these things. So I have to say that the Varkey Foundation, the people that I have met so far, every single one of them has been incredibly impressive. Well, nearly every single one. But they've all been very impressive, and they have the capacity, the intellectual ability to actually do something in this field. So I congratulate you, Augustine, in putting together such an excellent team. And, you know, I'm sure there'll be many fruits from that team.
Thank you, and I feel very lucky about that, proud, lucky. Contesto, ahora sí, para... La pregunta de Bíceps, que es el modelo que desarrollamos, que desarrolló Carlos y nosotros fuimos colaborando y enriqueciendo eso. Después de leer un montón de literatura al respecto, de liderazgo, de qué virtudes generan confianza en la escuela, pero en cualquier ámbito, Carlos dijo, la respuesta es BIC. Lo primero que dijo fue, lo anotó en un papel, dijo es BIC. Es benevolencia, integridad, competencia. Es la dimensión del amor, la honestidad, la transparencia, decir la verdad, y el tercero, la competencia técnica, saber. Entonces, charlando, dijimos, bueno, Vic, salvo la virome, capaz por el nombre de la virome no lo acordábamos, pero, y ahí Carlos fue como extendiéndolo, y un día dijo, encontré el acrónimo, es bíceps. Es el músculo. ¿Por qué el músculo? Porque hay que trabajarlo. Y el músculo, cuando lo dejas estar, lo perdés. No es que está adquirido y ya está. Hay que seguir trabajándolo. Entonces, la figura del músculo era muy buena y nos sirve. ¿Y qué son estas letras que conforman bíceps? ¿Qué virtudes? Como dije, la benevolencia. La persona buena atrae, genera confianza, que se preocupa por mí. La integridad, decir la verdad. Si te miente, no confías. Una vez que ves que el director te miente 1 o 2 veces, que te dice una cosa pero es otra, mirás para otro lado. No vas a buscarlo como alguien confiable. Y tercero, la competencia. Digo, hay que ser muy bueno y tratarnos bien, pero hay que saber. Entonces también es algo que hay que desarrollar todo el tiempo. En el campo en el que estamos hay que ser cada día más competentes, porque no alcanza solo con ser bueno. Y también sirve para replantearnos, bueno, ¿en qué campos tengo que seguir aprendiendo, formándome, ser el mejor? Y ahí sigue bíceps. La E es la excelencia, que tiene que ver con esto, buscar lo mejor, la magnanimidad, de buscar siempre un poco más. La P es la presencia. Para que podamos confiar hay que estar. Para mí la P hoy es la más difícil, porque estar presente, podemos estar acá y podemos estar en 20 lugares a la vez. El otro día di una charla en un salón que no había wifi y no había señal de celular. Nunca me escucharon tanto en los últimos 10 años. Porque estamos en 20 lugares a la vez. Entonces, ¿qué es estar presente? ¿Con quién, cuándo, cómo? Estar disponible. Un director de una escuela que está siempre ocupado, no está presente, no genera confianza. La respuesta de todo bíceps es generar confianza. Son virtudes personales para generar confianza con otros. Entonces, la P de la presencia. Y por último, la S del servicio. Estar para los demás. El que está para el otro me genera confianza, me ayuda. En el fondo, la benevolencia y el servicio hacen que saque lo mejor de mí, porque como la excelencia que busca lo mejor me motiva a buscar lo mejor para mí. Esas son las virtudes que nosotros quisimos promover para la escuela, para que generen confianza, pero la historia de estos bíceps es un paper que se escribió en el 2019, se presentó en la Universidad de Oxford ese año, pensado para escuelas, pero terminó sirviéndole, hubo como formación en bíceps para un grupo de cartoneros, para un equipo de fútbol de la D, para empresas que están formando a sus jóvenes talentos en bíceps. Y creo que no tiene límite, creo que es un muy buen modelo que nos sirve para promover la virtud, pero también para una reflexión personal. Para mí, cada vez que hablo de bíceps, siempre hay una que está floja, o muchas. Pero siempre hay una en la que uno puede decir, mañana puedo mejorar en esta.
Y una pregunta bien concreta. Cuando hacen capacitación, yo más enfocado a lo que es escuela, ¿no? Más allá de que sí se puede aplicar para toda la vida. Lo otro día en el precongreso dijeron, esto lo podés adquirir, Gabriela, ¿no? Dijo, toda la vida, no es algo que no lo aprendiste a los 7, lo podés seguir desarrollando toda tu vida. ¿Cómo es? ¿Se trabaja primero con la persona del docente? ¿Se le enseña cómo transmitirlo? ¿Cómo es más o menos esa parte?
Sí, hace poco tuvimos una visita de 2 profesionales que trajeron de Estados Unidos y de Oxford como método para que esto pase. Y había 7 recomendaciones, pero una y la más clara era el ejemplo, la ejemplaridad. Y hay un montón, pero dice, vos te acordás lo que ves que el otro hace, no lo que el otro dice. Uno se acuerda cómo te tratan, no el contenido. Entonces, el ejemplo es fundamental. Por eso nuestro trabajo es, pensando que esto llegue al aula, es formar a los docentes. Y en esa formación docente es formación teórica, hay que saber qué es la virtud, pero también práctica de pensar cómo lo vivimos a nivel personal y cómo lo llevamos al aula. Como la metodología tiene que ver con eso, con empezar en uno y con hacerlo patente, con encontrarle momentos en la agenda.
Voy a volver a James, yes. En Argentina en este momento no hay mucha educación filosófica, es decir, se ha dejado de estudiar la filosofía. Y yo veo que esto tiene mucho de filosofía, de vida y académica también, pero ¿cómo nos puedes ayudar a volver a...? ¿no?
There is philosophy here. You cannot educate someone unless you know what direction you're going to take. And so every teacher will have a philosophy. I think what you mean is it's not articulated. You don't actually describe the philosophy. So isn't it a better idea to think about that philosophy before you try to educate? You know, it's important to know the journey and what is the purpose of the journey and what is the end of the journey. So it's important to think about these things. In your library, in the Department for Education, there are books on philosophy. So it's not as if you haven't been thinking about this. Sometimes we have forgotten the philosophy by concentrating too much on competence. You can have a very competent teacher who doesn't like children. Isn't that strange? Somebody who could teach science, but actually is not really interested in the children. That is a bad teacher, even if they have all the best competencies you can imagine. You know, and I've seen this. I've seen someone who can teach, but actually doesn't really educate, doesn't really look at the whole child. You know, they think that just teaching them some chemistry is enough. No, you know, it's much deeper than that. And the students want more. They don't want robots in front of them. They want human beings. And so to educate, you must understand that you have to have an idea of what a human being is to educate. And this is philosophical. I think teachers do think that. They have an idea. They have desirable qualities. What is desirable in this child that I would like to encourage? You want them to become a mature, fully human being, you know. And this will take vision. So you need leadership with vision, but you also need teachers who can lead in their classrooms and can actually bring the best out in the students that they have.
Excelente. Bueno, quiero dejar un rato antes de terminar para preguntas que seguro deben tener, por lo cual quería hacer una reflexión antes, así después ya lo liberamos, pues sé que también quiere solucionar unas cosas temprano. Yo soy, para los que me conocen, como trabajo mucho por la autonomía de las escuelas y está relacionado con lo que consulté de cómo cada escuela puede ir encontrando su modelo, su metodología, su encuadre para la educación del carácter. Ahora, en nuestro sistema y en la situación actual de la educación en Argentina, a veces es muy difícil encontrar tiempo. Yo creo que esto requiere tiempo, requiere algo que, bueno, parece simple decirlo, pero con el sistema educativo, la centralidad que nosotros tanto luchamos para que las escuelas tengan su posibilidad de decidir sus proyectos, con una formación docente muy dedicada en teoría a las competencias, digo en teoría porque tampoco es que hay tal vez mucho éxito en eso tampoco. Creo que teniendo también en lo que hablábamos antes, la tecnología, los desafíos de los cambios del futuro, en donde la resiliencia es tan importante y la agencia, la autorregulación. Yo siempre, y más conectada desde hace estos 2 años con esta educación del carácter que a veces es tan difícil de explicar, creo que tenemos que aprovechar la tecnología para ganar tiempo en lo que es ciertos aprendizajes más técnicos, sistemáticos, y poder dedicarle tiempo a primero capacitarse, que tal vez esa capacitación es encontrarse como docentes y como directivos, para poder aprovechar esa posibilidad de generar en la escuela un proyecto, porque de nuevo, no es que se enseñe, no es que es una clase y no es que es una hora, esto es transversal, tiene que estar en todos los docentes, en todos los líderes de las escuelas, en los padres y en la comunidad educativa. Creo que lo que vamos a tratar de hacer desde la legislatura, desde nuestros proyectos de reforma educativa, es incorporar la educación del carácter y trabajar con el sector privado y trabajar con el tercer sector para poder encontrar un punto en común y trabajar. Después vuelvo a agradecerte. Thank you so much for everything, but I would like del público que pueda hacer algunas preguntas. No sé cómo lo vamos a moderar, si hay micrófono, pero creo que se escucha.
On Friday. Told that Ciudad is starting to speak about character education. Before we talk about
El foco
social
en
emotional
el lenguaje de foco es a educación en el carácter de los últimos 2 años.
like this.
¿Qué está pasando? ¿Por qué ese cambio de lenguaje, ese enfoque distinto de educación socioemocional, en habilidades socioemocionales, a educación en el carácter? ¿Por qué?
Why is this happening?
Well, one of the reasons is that social and emotional education has not had the effect in schools that the people who proposed that it would have. So it's not having the effect. I think it's mainly because teachers are not social workers. They're not psychologists. Teachers are teachers. They care for their children. That has much more of an influence over a child than trying to teach them about emotional and social control, in a sense. I've always been suspicious of that. Our government spent £500 million on social and emotional strategies. They've now abandoned it completely. They won't spend any money because all the research tells us that it doesn't have the effect that people think it does. It's only some people that thought it was a good thing. So they've changed the character. But I see this all over the world. We've been to Kazakhstan. You would never think that Kazakhstan would be dedicated, a Muslim society, dedicated to building character. It is. Pakistan, Vietnam, been to all these countries, to Japan, to South Korea. In China, they have character. They've had it a long time, but it's communist character. They want to implement with a little bit of Confucius thrown in. So it's like Confucius, like on the top of the cake, the sugar on top of the cake. And the rest of the cake is pure communism. They just want people to be obedient. Character is not about being obedient. It's about developing your skills to be critical and autonomous, an independent person who can think. But you have to think well. We don't want people to be critical on everything, just being critical. That's not good enough. You have to be critical because you know something and you can interpret it and think about it. And this is how you contribute. You don't contribute simply by criticizing everything for the sake of criticism. That doesn't help anyone. So all over the world, all over Europe now, even the French have become interested in character, which is, even the French. So it's very important that we recognize that this is something that OECD now recognizes as something important. Was it Friday or Saturday, the director of education for OECD, he now speaks a completely different language from the language he spoke 3 years ago. His language was very instrumental 3 years ago, very utilitarian. Now he's changing it. Some people think he's gone soft in the head, but no, he's changing the language because he knows that this is the way most countries are beginning to think. Because every country has problems. I've heard that you have knife crime. You should visit London. Knife crime is a big problem. It's a big problem in some of our cities. It's caused by many, many issues. We in London have large numbers of former immigrants from Africa going into shops and rioting, smashing everything. These are big department stores. And they go in and they just riot and smash everything up, even when customers are there. Now, I was told that they never do this in Nigeria. They never do anything like this in Africa. Why are they doing it in the West? Why are these things happening, sort of thing? You know, so we have problems like you know, so they exist all over the world, these problems. And character is not the panacea. It's not the answer, but it's something that can help, you know. It will help people to think better, you know, than they do at the moment.
Probably Andreas later started reading your book, so that's why he's...
Thank you.
How can we confront the moral relativism prevalent in our society, you know, movies, in our context books, to foster the authentic development of character education?
This movies.
Oh no, how can, I will going to repeat, how can we confront moral relativism?
Moral relativism. How to confront.
Right, well, moral relativism is always going to be with us. What you need is wisdom. You need wisdom to counter moral relativism, you know. People always want to have an excuse for what they do. So can we justify stealing? Can we justify, you know, lying to people? Can we justify dishonesty? You know, this is moral relativism encourages you to think that these things can be justified. So I'm not really a fan of moral relativism. I think that is a big problem. Media, social media, and also films, lots of Hollywood films encourage this. So when I was in Singapore, they were telling me that, you know, these American films that come out sort of thing, they're like a virus. They spread ideas, spread lots of ideas just by young people watching these films, and they think it's normal, you know. So it's almost like postmodernism, that anything counts and it doesn't matter how you feel or what you do. That's not true. And young people, sooner or later, realize when they get married, when they have children, they're not going to teach this nonsense to their children, you know? So the Minister of Education in Singapore was very concerned about these types of films that, you know, that they make. Lots of people say they don't believe in God, they don't believe in spirituality or anything else like that, you know, they're secular. And yet horror films are very popular. So lots of people want to go and see a horror film, which is all about, you know, things which don't exist, basically. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Does it come to take you somewhere? Ah, the finance man.
No, he's not.
He's not?
Hola, James. Pregunto por dos temas, que sobre el arte, el lugar del arte en la educación de carácter y el sentido del humor también en la educación de carácter. Gracias.
Okay. Humor is very important. We have to have a sense of humor. We have to laugh at ourselves. We can't take ourselves too seriously. So your best friends will have a great sense of humor. And I've met a few people here who have a good sense of humor. And this helps for friendship. So friendship often depends on having a sense of humor, to laugh at yourself, not take yourself too seriously. That's what I would say on the humor front. What was the other one?
And the arts.
Oh, the arts. Well, of course, beauty is hugely important because beauty helps you aspire to greatness in a sense. So get into some of your beautiful churches here, some of your, your buildings, etc. Architecture. So why did English schools build schools which almost look like churches? You know, they built them in a very medieval style. Because they know that buildings build character as well. So the architecture, if you're surrounded by beautiful buildings, it makes you more noble. That's the whole idea of architecture in schools. When you build a beautiful school, often our schools are not terribly beautiful. You know, lots of our schools have been built in the 60s. They're just concrete. That's not good. So you have to fill the schools with pictures. You have to give it some beauty, so that the children don't think that life is just grey concrete. You know, life is full of colours, and it's very important that we introduce children to art and you know, and it does have an effect on you. It has an effect on your soul, and it inspires you. Even if you're never going to be an artist, it does inspire you. So art, beauty, very important for character as well. Yeah. So I would just like to thank Marina for inviting me here today. She's been very gracious. She came to Oxford. I didn't have much time to speak with you then. I apologize. But she came to the conference and she could see what was happening globally. You've got a great representative here who is a thinker. And this is what's important. You need people who can think about these ideas and come up with ideas as solutions, things that they might be able to do. And I think you are already doing that. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Y no solo piensa, sino que eligió hace unos años la educación como su bandera, su tema, su desvelo, y son muy pocos desde este lugar que están así. Entonces, agradecer mucho, Marina, tu dedicación, tu compromiso y las oportunidades que nos va generando desde acá, pero también desde otros lugares en los que estás.
Thank you, James. Y gracias, Agustín, porque vos me has abierto muchas puertas también. Así que acá estamos trabajando, complementándonos y abriéndonos puertas entre todos. Bueno, con esto finalizamos y siempre a disposición. Yo estoy en la legislatura, estoy trabajando también en el ámbito académico, acá está Flor, del Austral. Así que desde todas las áreas, de todos los ámbitos, a disposición para ver cómo podemos colaborar para seguir desarrollando este proyecto de educación del carácter en Buenos Aires y en Argentina. Muchas gracias por venir.